All right, thank you so much for joining me for our Inclusive Dance Strategies session. My name is Emily DuBose, and my background is in dance. I'm a professional dancer in Boston. And then kind of while I was dancing, I was really missing, education and working with students. So that brought me to be an early education classroom teacher. Um, and then while I was doing that, I really missed dance. So I've been really lucky to be able to marry kind of both of my passions, working in community engagement, and more specifically in inclusive arts and dance programming. And that's kind of how we're here now. So I'm going to just dive right in. Um, so. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're all here because, we believe in the arts and dance, and we've seen the outcomes that students have when they participate. So I'm just going to run through a couple that come to mind really easily. We think about the physical and cognitive sides of dance very easily, right? Students are following directions. They're working on their imitation skills, which are really important for some of the populations like autism, and those students really need to work on their imitation skills. That doesn't come naturally for them. Rhythm, balance, motor coordination and sequencing, physical conditioning. It improves physical function and builds creativity. So these are things that we're going to see right away. Any dance classroom you walk into, you'll be able to kind of pinpoint those benefits right away. Some of the other things that we don't think about so readily are the social and emotional benefits that come from dance. So things like promoting inclusion, it enhances students' well-being. It creates opportunities for friendship and social interactions. It improves mental health and quality of life, improved independence, coping skills, teamwork. And a study was done about students that were participating in the Special Olympics. And the things that they found from that participation was, promoted social adjustment, quality of life, parent support, community involvement. These are all really important things. And to be able to come at those benefits from a dance and art side is really exciting. So, the benefits are endless, and I'm sure you could add to this list, and we could spend a whole session on that. So to create an inclusive dance setting, we need to understand inclusion. So that makes me think about, universal design for learning. So a couple considerations that we're going to think about are, we all learn differently. We know this. Think about the ways that you learn best. Do you learn by hearing things? You're an auditory learner. Do you have to see something to be able to get the information? You're a visual learner. Do you have to do it to get it? Then you're a kinesthetic learner. But really, that's just one piece of the puzzle. What if we had all of those things happening at the same time? Think about how rich our learning experience would be. So again, we all learn new information differently, and we want as teachers to be able to teach so that the most learners are engaged and can access the content. I think we find that, we're really good at teaching the way that we learn. So as a visual learner, I'm always showing, but I might not always do a really good job about saying what I mean, counting to the music, those kind of things that would really help an auditory learner. So think about that bigger pie instead of just having one slice of this of this information. I also think about, like, what does learning look like? It doesn't always look the same. We all learn differently. So our expression of our learning might look different. Learning looks like engagement, and that can be in a lot of different ways. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You know, learning looks like demonstrating understanding. And again, that can happen in different ways, and we'll talk about that. Um, you know, thinking about critique and feedback, getting that information from students, having them watch each other. What do they see? What are they grabbing onto? And then, active observation, just like I was talking about, students watching each other. You don't always have to participate to be learning. So I think that can be frustrating from a teaching standpoint. Sometimes there's a student, you know, on their own, or it doesn't seem like they're very engaged, but don't underestimate that they're not getting that information. It might just look a little bit different for them. So this comes to mind, this image. I've put together a lot of this kind of furniture, and I'm sure you have as well. And it doesn't always come with the best directions, right? It comes with like 1,000 pieces and one of those little Allen wrenches that is like this big. And somehow you're supposed to build a shelf from this. So I always think about, how could these directions be so much better? They could be so much better. This is one step of probably 3 that they gave us. So, at least this is kind of, there's some lettering, a little bit of a zoom in on something that's happening here with one of the screws. They even on this one gave us some written directions, which is really great. That doesn't always happen. But think about if you only got the picture, right? How would that work for you? Would you be able to put together the shelf? Maybe you have some decoding issues, or what if they just spoke to you the directions, but it wasn't spoken in your native language? Or what if no instructions came with it at all? How are you going to do that? Maybe you had some background knowledge, like you put together a lot of this furniture in college, but none of those things separately are all that helpful. If we had all of those things together, if we had the written directions, the pictures, maybe even a video of somebody putting it together, someone demonstrating it, maybe someone signing the directions, then we have a more inclusive, more full picture and of what this would look like. And I bet we would all get to our finished product a lot easier. So just an example of how, all of these things coming together can be super helpful. Okay, so again, this is universal design for learning. So this really started out as universal design, which you've probably heard about. And that was really just a concept for creating architectural space and physical space, designing places. So the first thing that comes to mind is like curb cuts, right? So that cut in the curb that allows for wheelchairs to easily gain access to from the parking lot to a structure, right? Automatic doors. Those are all really helpful design concepts that enhance a physical space so that everybody can access them. So now we turn this into learning and curriculum building. Now it becomes universal design for learning. So again, it's an approach for designing curriculum and instruction to meet the needs of the greatest number of users. So, we want to have multiple means of representation. So that means, in our classroom, multiple media, things that will activate background knowledge, right? Just like the shelf. Some of us have put together that shelf. How can we activate that background knowledge for our students? Using vocabulary, multiple means of expression and action. So we're gonna think about our method of communication. We're going to think about, you know, can they dance it? Can they write it? Can they show it? How can we give them more means for expressing what they're learning? And then multiple means of engagement. Again, we're talking about relevance, connection to the student. So how can you connect some of these concepts that you're learning in the classroom to their daily life? I always think about, you know, we wait in line at dance class. Well, where else do we wait in line? We wait in line at the grocery store. We wait in line at the bus stop. So linking some of these bigger concepts back to their daily life or other subjects that they're learning, you know, only helps enhance that, that experience. So again, that total language approach, that's how we're getting that full pie picture, bringing all of the information together. So we're gonna read it, see it, hear it, and then do it and experience it. All right, I love this picture. I think, you know, this is one of those Microsoft design toolkit. They're very cool. But each, um, each situation, so they have 3 different situations, will benefit from whatever modification is given. So even just the first one, touch. So someone who only has one arm, someone with an arm injury, and a new parent all benefit from, you know, automatic doors, right? So carrying groceries, all of those things, all of these people are going to benefit from the same modification. I always think about, you know, when we plan for the edges, everybody benefits. I think that's, you know, kind of our mantra. And because we're talking about inclusion, I thought we could just spend a couple seconds on inclusive language and communication. You know, language doesn't fit everybody. It's not a one size fit all. So people will prefer certain things, but I think this is a good place to start and maybe a best practice. However, if someone with a disability comes to you and says, you know, I'd rather be referred to as XYZ, perfect, then that is how we will refer to that person or speak to that person. But this is a good place to start. So what you say, right, places the individual before the disability. So that's person first language, right? I have autism, not I am autistic. I'm talking about myself instead of my disability. Does that make sense? We're taking a strengths-based approach. We all like that, right? We like when people talk about our strengths rather than our weaknesses. I have plenty of them, but I really like when people talk about my strengths, and that goes for anybody. And then we're going to remain, excuse me, emotionally neutral. So I think we see a lot of like inspiration porn when it comes to disability, or you know, it can be emotional, but we want to take ourselves away and remain neutral and professional. How you say it, the tone. You know, when working with students, especially in certain populations, tone kind of escapes them. Tone has meaning, right? So when I think about the word um, really, really can mean a lot of different things. So say really, you know, like you're, I don't know, like you're skeptical. Really? What about if you were mad? Really? Or what if you're questioning? Really? Right? So all of those things mean different things, but it's the same word. But, you know, that may not come across in what you're saying. So think about your tone, think about what you're saying, and really say what you mean. Don't leave any room for guessing. Think about your body language. How are you standing? How are you sitting? We can read a lot by people's body language, and body language is mirrored as well. So think about how your students are feeling, how they're looking today. Maybe you should, we should all step back and think like, oh, maybe this is a me problem as well. My body language is down, it's crossed, it's whatever. How can I show with my body language that we're ready to go, we're here, we're ready to dance? And then I think about communication devices. How are we communicating? Some students use communication devices. That's amazing. Get to know that student. How can we use that in the classroom, the dance classroom, etc.? So just a couple other tips. Make sure that we're speaking directly to the person that you're speaking to. If there's an interpreter, if there is an aide and a student, and my question is for the student, I'm not going to ask the aide, right? I'm going to ask the person that I really want the answer from. And then, they will negotiate how to communicate. They're really good at that. They've been practicing that. But make sure that we're speaking to the person. Ask for clarification. This can be really embarrassing, and I don't know why we, I get in these situations all the time with tons of people, right? You don't quite hear them. You didn't understand the first time, and for some reason we don't want to ask, excuse me, I didn't hear you. What did you say? Could you say that again? Could you rephrase what you were saying? I didn't quite understand the first time. It's okay to ask for clarification. Then we don't get down the road and it's like, oh no, I really missed something here. It's okay to ask for clarification. We all do it. And then of course, don't confuse communication with competency. All right, so before we head into the studio, this will just kind of wrap up kind of this universal design concept. So we're gonna just have a mindset shift, right? Everyone has unique and specific needs. I have my own needs and you have yours, and that's okay. That's what makes us really awesome, and it makes us human, right? So, diversity is the norm. It's not the exception. We're going to think about barriers to access instead of placing blame. So students aren't barriers, okay? There's a lot of other barriers to access. So how can we, focus on the barriers, taking action, right? Instead of who can we blame, who's to blame for this? That doesn't really get us too far. Let's focus on the barriers, right? And then, as teachers, it's our responsibility to change the instruction. How can we make sure, again, that all students can access the information that we're wanting them to receive? We're going to change the instruction, not the student. So hopefully, that is a good place to start before we even walk into the studio. All right, so here we are. We're in the studio, creating an inclusive studio. So, first we're going to prepare our staff, and maybe you're really lucky and have multiple people on your staff. Maybe it's just you in the classroom, and that's fine. We're going to ready ourselves. So we're going to get to know the context. So that just means, where are we teaching? When are we teaching? Are you teaching in a school setting? Is it an after school setting? Is it an extracurricular? So there's a lot of iterations to this, but know what yours is and call it out. Think about it, right? A school day activity looks a lot different than a weekend activity. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But think about, where are you teaching? When are you teaching? Of course, you're really good at this. Get to know your students. Get to know how they communicate. Think about their behavior. Are there any physical or sensory needs? What are their preferences, motivators, and interests? I mean, that is gold, right? If you can know what really motivates a student, tuck that away. If they love, the butterfly song or whatever it is, and they're having a hard day and they're not participating, you have the butterfly song in your back pocket. And then think about their goals. All students have goals, whether they, can tell you, or, you're looking at some of their movement or whatever. They all have goals, and, it's part of your job as a teacher to help them accomplish those goals or to work towards those goals. Some of us have this luxury of getting to know the families, and some of us don't, and that's okay. But if you do have access to families, get to know them, get them on your side, ask questions. How are things going at home? What do they see as their students' motivators and interests? What do they see as their students' goals? Why are they doing this program? Why are they taking dance? Again, I think the more allies you have, the more information you have on your team, the better. So use it. You want to review student records. Again, not all of us have access to records, but if you do, great, use it to your advantage. Sometimes medical things are disclosed, sometimes they're not, and that's okay. Maybe they took dance last session, and you can look at, some notes from a teacher or get with a teacher that worked with them before. All that information is so, so helpful. And then you're ready to curriculum and lesson plan. When I first, get a set of students, I get a binder with all of these names that mean not a lot to me. But I kind of have an idea by age group and curriculum that is given to me, what I'll be working on. But I really try to meet my students first before filling out a year's worth of curriculum, right? So then we can tailor some of these lessons to them. So that brings us to the participants. We're going to prepare them. Social stories are amazing. I don't have one in this PowerPoint. I can make sure that one is added to your, all of the things that you'll get your packet with this presentation. But social stories just kind of preview a situation, right? Coming to dance class, very first then language. First you come into the room and sit down, then we take attendance, then we warm up. So it's a preview of the things that will happen at dance class. It's a really easy way for students to take home and be able to know what is expected, what's coming. Pictures are included in this. So, looking at themselves or students that look like them doing this is really cool. I would say, make sure that your social stories and all of your handouts, anything that you're using, visuals in the studio are age appropriate. We wouldn't want to use like cartoon images for older students if that's not appropriate. So just something to think about. Videos are always really great. Twofold, students really love to see themselves dance. So using videos of themselves that maybe you've taken, so they can practice at home or show families, whatever. But also, are there videos that enhance the experience of something that you're working on? If you're working on, a kind of like a sliding feeling, what are some videos that kind of show that sliding feeling, right? Maybe some ice skating, maybe a sled going down a hill, something that again brings that image to them so that they can see, oh yeah, right, I've done that, I know what that feels like, that's what it looks like. Videos are really, really helpful. Family observations, again, sometimes this is possible, sometimes it's not. But again, having that family buy-in can be really helpful. Open houses are so great, again, for students to be able to come and preview what's happening. Sometimes something new can be really daunting and scary. An open house allows students to come and see the studio, meet a teacher, maybe see one of these social stories, all before class starts. So anything you can do before class starts to get students prepared only sets you up for success, right? And then maybe an ability to talk to current families or families that have been through the dance class, the dance program, whatever it is. Families usually will talk very highly, especially if they're willing to talk, right? They want to brag about programs that their student did really well in. And hearing from parents who have students like their own is really helpful. All right, so now we're going to come into this space and ready our space. So we're going to remove the distractions. My daughter is 10 months old now, and she's starting to move. And as exciting as that is, it's scary because there's a lot of danger all around, right? And they're so good at finding it. So, you know, when we were readying our house, we kind of got down on her level, kind of looked around at all of the danger that was around us. So that's kind of what you're doing here. Get down to the student level, put your student lens on. Where are students going to run to hang first? Where are they going to get distracted? Where are they going to hide? You know, I have this picture of a studio, and maybe you're really lucky and have a studio that looks like this, a traditional studio with bars and mirrors and bright lights. But you know, a mirror can be really distracting. I like to look at myself in the mirror. So does everybody else, right? So kind of getting stuck in the mirror can be one of those distractions. So maybe we're thinking about how we're orienting our teaching. Maybe we're not facing the mirror. Maybe we're starting in a circle instead of facing the mirror, or we have our back to the mirror. Maybe there's a time where we can really get involved in the mirror, right? So just thinking about all of the distractions in the room, as much, you know, clean as we can start, the better. I think about the seating and the chairs within a room. Sometimes we have rooms that just come with chairs, right? And that can be really great, or it can be a distraction. If that's the case, you know, try to move the chairs, use them to your advantage. I'll talk about in a couple slides how I use chairs in the classroom. I think they're really great, but if that's a distraction, we can deal with that. Also thinking about, you know, maybe an area where we can keep chairs where students can go when they're tired or whatever. So using chairs and seating to your advantage. Creating containment. You know, sometimes we're given this huge room, and that's amazing, and we're all super thankful for that. I'm thinking about like a gym, but it's really big, and that's creates more time for students to escape or to run or to get distracted and not be watching what's going on. You know, create that containment. You could use chairs, you could use floor markers, you could divide the room in half somehow. Don't feel like you have to use the whole room. Sometimes, you know, gathering in a small corner of the room is a really great place to start. I kind of like feeling cozy and contained. Some students don't, but that's part of your job, right? To create the space that is going to benefit your students. I think about an entry and exit plan. Your class starts way before students even enter the room, right? So what are your expectations before students come into your dance room? You know, are we quiet coming into the room? Do we need to be quiet to enter the room? Does the teacher invite the students into the room, or do they just blaze in and, you know, it's kind of chaos from the beginning. So think about how you're going to invite students. I always think it's nice to have music playing. Maybe there's a line that students wanted a timer invited into the classroom with the music playing, and they have some kind of routine that they know that's going to come and bring them into the room. Maybe they sneak into the room and find their place, right? So just think about that entry plan. And then the same with the exit plan. We want students to leave regulated. And not disrupting other classes, other people. I know that if I had a student that was in a dance class and they came out like, ooh, so dysregulated, that's not always like, okay, bye, see you next week. That's really fun, right? But no, how can we return our students to other classes, to their parents, whomever is receiving the students next, in a regulated manner? We can create a take a break space. I think this is really great. A yoga mat with a sign that students know that's take a break space. Maybe it has a timer, maybe there's a yoga card or something that they're still participating in class somehow, but some students really do just need like, I need a break. I have 2 minutes, whatever it is, and then I'm going to rejoin class again. We want to plan for the transitions. Everything can go crazy in a transition, right? That's when students get lost. So plan for them, write them down, think about it. I think sometimes, we do this amazing warm up and students are feeling great. And then it's like, all right, now go line up so for across the floor. And then everything goes haywire, right? So how can we transition students from warm up to a line or whatever's coming next in a way that's thoughtful and, will keep everybody contained and regulated? Maybe it's a skill that we were just working on in warm up. How can we move very slowly to our line? Maybe it's more concrete. Maybe you have a star pattern on the floor that students follow. Let's follow the rainbow road or whatever it is to get to our line. But plan for those transitions. I think we think about the bigger, warm up across the floor, whatever else we're doing in class. But those little moments, those are the things that we really need to plan for. And then lastly, we want to plan for wait time. We know there's tons of wait time, right? My music doesn't start right away. 1,001 things happen in a dance class or class in general. So plan for the wait time. They're waiting as their friends move across the floor. How are they waiting in line? Are they tapping the beat on different body parts while they are waiting their turn? Are they practicing the arms from the combination? Like, what are they doing? How can we keep everybody engaged and together so that that wait time isn't wasted? It's not a time for students to disengage. Again, it's a lot of planning. Plan. Also, on top of this wait time, give wait time. I think sometimes as teachers, we're trying to fly through everything. We want to get everything done. We have, these standards to meet, these objectives to get in. It's okay. You'll get there. Plan for the wait time. Give students processing time. I think sometimes that is something that I struggle with, to slow myself down and let students process. If I ask a question, it's okay for them to process and wait for the answer. If we're moving across the floor as a group, but there's a straggler, I'm going to wait for that straggler to come and join the group, even though we've been at the other corner of the room for a little while. It's okay. Let that student have their journey and then rejoin. And then as a group, we can all move together. So lots of waiting. We're also going to think about some sensory considerations that, I think we automatically, when we think about sensory things, we think about light and sound. Those are easy. I can, turn on the lights. I can turn off the lights. Maybe you're lucky and you have a dimming switch. But how is the light affecting your students? Are they really dragging today? Maybe we need to pick up the lights, get everybody moving, and go. Maybe everybody is very dysregulated and we need to take it down a notch. Let's kind of chill and bring the lights down. Light has a lot to do with our mood. So think about your lighting when you're planning and preparing. Think about the students in your class. Same thing with the sound. Students can be very affected by sound. I would say with the students that I have worked with, a lot of, because in the program that I work in, they're self-selecting to be in there. A lot of them are sensory seekers. So they really want that sound, they want the light, they want to feel it, right? But that might not always be the case. So think about the sound and how it's affecting students. Some things that we may not always think about are scent. So you can control some of the scent, right? I think about what kind of shampoo am I using? Did I put on perfume? We don't need any of that in the dance classroom. It's just another distraction. I think about tactile. How are we using tactile, our touch, in the classroom? I think about this a lot in a warm-up. How can we use, different types of touch to give ourselves input? That also may mean that a student does not want to be touched, and that's also okay. But a lot of students are looking for that tactile input. So, in a break time, okay, everybody, let's give ourselves a little squeeze. Let's rub our hands together and then we can feel the heat on our hands, right? So what are ways that we can use different tactile things in the dance classroom? We're going to think about the way everything looks, what they're wearing. That can be a huge barrier, right? So think about what students are wearing to class. Is it too tight? Are they pulling out a tag? Are their socks bothering them? If we could all go barefoot, that would be great, but that doesn't always serve the students. So get to know them, be aware of pulling, of all of those little things that maybe a student came in today that just isn't quite how they always are. It might be something that they're wearing, it just looks not that comfortable. And then thinking about physical contact, again, kind of that tactile thing. Some students don't mind touch. Some really do. So we can create barriers for touch, in the next couple slides, using Therabands or something. If we're all in a circle, they may not want to hold hands. Could we hold a Theraband? Could we hold a scarf? Could we, all of those things. Think about the physical contact that you're giving. Okay, so here we are, the props. Let me just move this forward. So some props that I think about using in the classroom: chairs, even though I just told you to remove all the chairs. Chairs in my classroom were always really, really helpful. And I think about those plastic preschool chairs, really colorful, right? They come in red and blue. They're in every elementary classroom in America. But chairs can be really great if used well. They can create containment and grounding. Somewhere or somewhere for a student to sit, right? Ground them. This is your spot. You're going to stay here, right? It helps them avoid fatigue while building strength. So, maybe we can't stand and do a long combination because we get tired. That's okay. Let's do it in the chairs. And then we're still building that strength. We can still work on core. We can still work on stamina. We can still work on all of those things while in the chair. Um, I I really think that it creates inclusion, right? So if I have a student who uses a wheelchair, um, it's so great that everybody is in a chair. We are all on the same level. We're all moving very similarly. Um, I think new movement and ideas really grow from, maybe taking a different perspective. um, I think, chairs again, I'm going back, but creating that containment. I love using chairs in a circle. I think it's a great way to build community. We're seeing each other, we're looking at one another, and the best part is we're staying put. We're not running around. We're not, um, you know, running. I think we get a lot of running in the classroom. So creating that grounding is really great. The rubber floor markers. So I just have a star. It doesn't have to be a star, right? Maybe that's not age appropriate. Maybe they're circles or squares or different shapes. But they can visually identify space and location. So just like the chairs, it can create grounding. You're going to move from the upper corner red star to the lower corner blue star. That is a pathway that you're defining. It's very concrete. I understand. I'm not just saying we're going to move diagonally. That's a hard concept. And I have to be able to imagine what that looks like in my mind. If I actually put the stars at either end of the room, then I'm really marking where students are going. So creating pathways, making movement and patterns visible. So again, we can dance with the floor markers. We can move along the floor markers. They're great. You can use them in so many ways. And I'm sure that you have more creative ways, and things will come up in the classroom that are really great with those. Scarves are great. Everybody loves a scarf. So, something lightweight, colorful, amazing. They can support apprehensive movers. Sometimes students don't want to explore, to move their arms. It's awkward. But you give them a scarf and you ask them to move the scarf. That's different. It takes the movement away from them and puts it on the scarf. So it can help support students who are just a little bit apprehensive. It can increase fluidity of movement. And some populations, have that rigidity. I think a lot about students on the autism spectrum have a lot of rigidity. So fluidity is something that is hard for them. It's kind of hard to move the scarf very rigid. Even if I do flick it, it has like a long drawn out movement, right? So kind of extending a movement helps us understand and feel what a fluid type movement looks like. Therabands are so great. Just your regular exercise Theraband, right? We probably have one of these somewhere that never gets used. We can use them to develop strength. So the way that they are intended, they can create sensory input, creating that resistance, tying them to the legs of a chair and letting students bounce their legs on them. They're getting some sensory input that they may need while they're following you in, the warm up or whatever it is. And like I was talking about before, we can create a barrier for contact. So if I held one end of the Theraband and the other student held the other end, we're still connected, but we're not touching. And sometimes that can just be a little bit more just comfortable for that student. I've tied these to the bar while we're waiting, right? Wait time, for students to, as they're waiting, to walk up the Theraband line, and while they're waiting, they can pull and give themselves some input. So again, you can use them in 1,001 ways. There's 3. Some STEM toys, these create safety and structure, and can provide comfort and coping. And students that really use them well know how to use them. They probably have a STEM toy that they either bring with them, they use at home. If they do, that's great. Have them bring it to class, and maybe there's a time in class, maybe there's a place in class that they can use that STEM toy. Use it strategically. Again, I think we can use it when we're getting dysregulated, when we need a little bit of comfort, those kind of things, when we're tired, things like that. So use it strategically. Instruments are so great. In my class, I always have a music time that we work on musical skills. And, having a little drum, a little shaker, anything that makes noise, right? We can use the floor, can help develop musicality, provide input. Again, more sensory seeking students, give them that input. Allow for additional participation. Maybe, a student isn't really feeling like dancing today, but they want to keep the beat on the drum, or it allows them to participate by dancing. Let's all grab our shakers and we're going to shake while we dance for 8 counts, and then we're going to freeze. And then we're going to use it again, moving with our instrument for 8 counts, making music, and then we freeze, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we can use instruments safely in our classroom, and students love it. They love music time. All right, so we're going to think about the structure and schedule. We want to provide a safe and predictable environment. That's our job as a teacher, right? Lots of previewing. I brought, my dance schedule. So a visual schedule is really great. I have a little star that moves down the track, right? First, today when we come in, we're going to do our welcome and attendance. Then we're going to do our warm up in our chairs. Then we're going to go across the floor. Then we'll have music time. Then we do our center work, and then it'll be time for us to say goodbye. So preview your class with your students before you come in, before you start dancing, right? Visual supports. Yay. All kinds of visual supports that we can use. Labeling things, labeling the take a break space, labeling the chairs, the mirror. Maybe there's a stop sign on the door to remind our friends that we don't leave the classroom, right? The door is a stop. We do not use the door unless we've asked or whatever. So tons of visual supports. You guys are also creative. If you're, using shapes in your classroom, where can we find shapes? How can we show shapes? There's a ton of different visuals that we can give. Again, using first then language. So simple, short. First, we're going to take attendance, then we're going to warm up. Create that consistency. We all like consistency. We like reliability. Students thrive on that. They want to be able to count on you and to count on what's coming. So, and then the last thing is visual cues and reminders. So, do you have, do you have a classroom thing that you do, right? Like clapping your hands to get people's attention. I have a teacher that always does, if you're listening, say, oh yeah, right? And then the students go, oh yeah. And it's so cute and so great, and it brings the energy back up, but then everybody's focused. So how can we use those visual or auditory or whatever reminders in our classroom? And then this is, again, just if you look on the side here, kind of like a visual schedule of what they're going to do, or, this may not all apply to dance, but you get the idea. Okay, so yay, we get to teach instruction, right? All of these things, we can put it all together. So when we're teaching, we're thinking about backwards planning. Start with the end goal in mind. You're going to set clear learning objectives. Again, using that total language approach, we're going to say it, we're going to do it, we're going to show it, we're going to sign it. Have high and clear expectations always. We're going to use scaffolding. So, if my end goal is for students to skip, think about all the things that have to happen before you skip. Skipping is really difficult. We have to balance on one foot. We have to be able to march, right? Marching looks a lot like skipping. But you have to add a hop, so you have to hop. So those are a lot of things that have to happen before you skip. So kind of breaking all of that down and then getting students, using that scaffolding to get them to skipping or whatever the goal is. Keeping our directions clear, short, and single step. Again, if thinking back to that shelf that I was building, if things were shorter, if the directions, each step was shorter instead of like put the first 35 things together, that's really difficult. Break it down. We all benefit from that. We're going to use repetition and review, of course. Always repeat, always review. We all benefit from that. I love going into a class where we've already done some of the material, then I can work on it. I can revisit it. We find new things within repetition. So don't shy away from using it. Again, we're planning for that wait time, right? Not only what are we doing during wait time, but we're giving wait time, making sure that all of our students are coming along with us on our ride. Lots of modeling, not only you, but students, right? Students love to model. They love to show what they're learning. So let them. Again, we're going to be consistent and, encourage at-home practice. We're going to continue teaching. These are kind of bigger, broader ideas. Again, linking things back to their daily life. We're going to, this is just like what we're learning in science or whatever. How can you link things to other curriculum? How can you link things to their daily life? Again, it only enriches the information that they're learning. Reflect. Take time to reflect after you do something. How did that feel? How did that feel differently? What did it remind you of? Students are able to link these concepts back to other things that you won't think of. So let them reflect, ask them. It's so great to hear what they say or show or bring pictures so they can point to things, again, giving multiple ways of expression and engagement. Create the rituals. Dance really lends itself to rituals, right? Any ballet class that you go in across the world, whether you're a beginner or a professional, always starts at the bar, always starts with plie, right? And those are really beautiful moments. It's like a reset, and it's great for students to be able to rely on some of those rituals. It creates community and predictability. So, maybe you always do the same warm-up. That's great. It's a way for students to be able to really get to know the warm-up, to live in the warm-up, to be able to show the warm-up, to do parts of the warm-up, to model parts. There's so many rituals that you can implement. It also builds community, and that's really what we're looking to do, right? Make sure you get to know your students, know them in the classroom. How do you check in? Are you asking, what are they doing this weekend? How are they coming into class? Are they good? Are they sad? Get to know them, build the community, give lots of opportunity for them to work in groups, in pairs, different ways to work with one another. Use transitions to practice skills. We already talked about that a little bit, but don't forget transitions and that wait time. We really need to plan for it, and don't let it go to waste. It's a time where we can really reinforce skills and ideas that we're working on. We don't always want to do this, but I think it's something that we can think about, and a good idea that, maybe there's a calm activity to just reset. I had a class that kind of struggled to get through a whole hour or 45-minute worth of work. It's tiring. It can be, there's distractions, a lot can go on during class. So, after we went across the floor, we all came together and had a little yoga time where every student had a yoga card. I think I got one, had a yoga card, and, they would look at their card, then they would, recreate this pose, and then we would all match them. So not only are we taking time to reset and be calm, we're also working on other skills. So it doesn't have to be lost that, we're taking a calm moment. We're also working on some other things that are just as important as, these big gross motor movements that we're working on in dance class. Again, let students lead. They love it. Once you let them lead, they're always going to want to lead, and that's great. It's okay. Just it's some of these students don't get to lead in other areas of their learning or their life. So let them lead here. It gives them that really proud moment. And it's great to see. And then the last one is, use free or improvisational dance to your advantage. I always would put it at the end of class to kind of, see what students learn. It's a chance for students to practice and to show what they've learned. I think free dance can kind of get a little nebulous, right? Sometimes as teachers, we're tired by the end of the class and it's just like, all right, just dance. But if someone were to tell you that, I'm going to turn on music and just dance, it can be like a little like, whoa, I don't know if that's for me, right? Like, I don't want anybody to just say dance, okay? To me, give them some boundaries, have them really work on some of the skills that they were working on. And, once in a while, great, let them free dance. Let's see how they want to move, inherently, but it's not a wasted moment. You can really use that to your advantage. And then just the last thing, I thought I'd just throw this in here. We talked so much about planning, and I know we each have our own device or way or system that we plan, but I just wanted to call out a couple of things that maybe would be helpful in adding to our already systems or whatever we're using. The first thing is really calling out your learning standards and objectives. And some of us have to do this because we're in a more formal education setting, but even so, hold yourself accountable. What are the learning standards and objectives that you're working on today? The other section that I want to call out is, this portion for individual modifications and needs. I think sometimes we get in the classroom and we start doing something and then it's like, oh no, I forgot about XYZ and I need to make a modification. But if we can think about the activity that we're working on, and maybe a student or whatever needs a modification, we can already have thought about it and made a really thoughtful choice for them or with them, or something maybe really worked last class. So write it down. So and so worked really well with the drum. How can we work it into more of our class, or whatever? Just a way to think more thoughtfully about the modifications that we're giving. And then the last thing is, at the bottom, I always put a section for notes for next week. I think sometimes after class, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, we got through, right? And then it's like, we'll put it away. And then next Monday, when I'm planning my planning day, I can look back and I can see, oh, that's what happened during class. This is what was happening, instead of just planning and, forgetting about the class that happened previously. All the things that happened last class will probably happen in the next class, if not more, in a bigger way. So, think about those things. Think about the behavior, things that worked, things that didn't work. Everything that we do doesn't always work. It's okay. Try it again. Don't try it again. Don't bring the didgeridoo to class, right? Like, that's a no now. We're not going to try that next time because so-and-so really became dysregulated. So it just is a way for us to plan more thoughtfully. Yeah. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you have some more ideas about how to create an inclusive classroom. And thank you for all the work that you're doing.